assassin. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest. You know I break necks, call me Jack Tate. I have no regrets while your life is fading. I'm a crazy fuck equivalent to Satan. When I'm behind the mic, I feel like the greatest.
What up, y'all? You're listening to Sports Talk with Tropp, and I'm your host, Katie Tropp. Well, it's episode number 24. You know what that means. It's the Kobe episode. Sup? Well, I'm not going to obviously do a whole episode on Kobe. I've already basically done that. I talk about him all the time. But, since it's episode 24, I got to call it the Kobe episode because he wore 24, of course. But anyways, you can check out my new music video that I dropped on Saturday for The Art of the Bitch, directed by Nahar Media. Beat produced by Ovi on the Beat, the same guy who produced that Jack Tatum track right there. So yeah, check it out. It's a crazy shit show. And I actually use a dick as my microphone, so chopped off dick. So if you boys were thinking, oh yeah, this bitch is hot, yeah, wait till you see me rapping with a chopped off dick, and I think you might have some different thoughts. But then again, I know there's some fucking weirdos out there, so that's something some dudes may actually like. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, you can still check out my music video, weirdo or not. You can go ahead and check it out. I encourage everybody to at katietropp.net or on my YouTube channel. Just search for Katie Tropp. And just something random I saw too when I was posting my video. I just realized my first music video that I filmed for my first single called Get Down. I released that 10 years ago. On March 27th, 2012 was when I released my very first music video. So I've been at this, at least the music video portion of it, for 10 years. I released my first album, Crazy Cracker, in 2010, but it takes a couple years to establish things with certain people. And I was able to find my homie Daniel Rigdon. He was the one who directed that Get Down music video. And we just filmed it in my garage. It was a fucking freezing ass cold day. But it was fun. And I just thought it was crazy. I'm like, damn, it's been like exactly 10 years since I released my first music video. And here I still am, pumping out music videos on the regular. All right, now let's see how my fantasy basketball league ended up. My homie David, team pick and roll. He ended up winning the league. It was a close battle between he and Rattlers this week for the championship. They went back and forth basically every day, and they were within like one category of each other. But David, team pick and roll. The dude knows how to kick our ass. It's been a few years since he's won the league, but just so y'all know, he is now the 5-time champ of my Lakers Champs fantasy basketball league. And he's killing it. He's owning us. And so that means second place ended up going to Rattlers, who's also won the league a couple times as well. So second place isn't too bad, but it's not where he's used to. But shout out to Alan for doing such a good job with his team. And then good old Team Crazy Crackers, that's me, ended up in third place in my fantasy basketball league. So that's not too bad. You always want to win, but hey, coming in third place is usually not that bad, and especially in my fantasy leagues are pretty crazy. I tend to I purposely go out of my way to find people who are competitive and who actually take it seriously. I'm not meaning like you need to like get all angry and shit, but I mean just people who actually set their rosters regularly and actually like show up to the draft or try to show up to the draft. So David, team pick and roll, ended up winning the Lakers. I'm sorry, I called it Lakers Champs. It's actually Lakers Dynasty Fantasy Basketball League, Commissioner Katie Tropp. And so then also in my fantasy hockey leagues, 3 of the 4 leagues I'm in are now in the playoffs. The one that started last week, I actually ended up moving on. I won 6-3, and now I'm moving on to play Team Ben there. So hopefully, this is the semifinals, so it's on to the finals if I win this week. So we'll see how that goes. Then in two other leagues, the playoffs began this week. One league, I ended up just making the playoffs at the number 7 spot. Team Knock 'em Out, that's me. And I'm versus Big Thunder, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I'm able to move on. And then in the other league, I also barely made the playoffs at seed number 7. And I am playing Team El Stockholmo. So, we'll see how I do in fantasy hockey this week. So that's a fantasy update. And now let's talk about the Final Four that happened this weekend. And then we got the national championship tonight. So, first of all, I don't think there's any way that tonight's national championship is going to live up to that game that we got from Duke versus North Carolina on Saturday. Holy shit. Like, first of all, we had the snooze fest between Kansas and Villanova. Kansas just absolutely obliterated Villanova from start to finish. That wasn't a game at all. Villanova had absolutely zero shot from tip. And so, Kansas easily moved on. But luckily, Duke versus North Carolina saved us. And, that game was good from the jump. It went back and forth. It had everything you needed in a game. And now North Carolina, forever and for always, can say that they ended Coach K's career. That's just something that all North Carolina fans are happy about, excited about, and you always want stupid little bragging rights, and that's stupid little bragging rights right there. So they definitely they sent Coach K packing, and his career is now done. But that was just an insane game, and I don't think there's any way the national championship's going to live up to that. But it was so much fun to watch. That was one of the best college basketball games I've seen in a long time. And it was just a great tournament overall. But that was a perfect close to the end to this March Madness. And so now tonight we have Kansas versus North Carolina. Now I've doubted North Carolina this entire way through, but I'm still going to doubt them this week because the number one word I use to describe the way Kansas has been playing, especially in March Madness, is they play suffocating. They suffocate the shit out of their opponents. They play great defense, and they just, once they get you trapped, it's just hard to get out. And so just watching them, they just absolutely suffocate each one of their opponents. Every one that they've played in this tournament, they just suffocate them like they're a fucking anaconda. That's what maybe Kansas should change their mascot to, the Anacondas, because they just suffocate their opponents to death. And it's fun to watch. Not a Kansas fan at all. As a matter of fact, I'm the exact opposite. I root against Kansas at all costs. But I expect them to play great versus North Carolina. Like I said about North Carolina, I haven't believed in them at all. Obviously, they didn't need my belief because they made it here to the national championship, and they could win. I mean, they've got a really solid team. They believe in themselves, too. So they've bought into their system. They know what they're about. They're not scared. And really, I don't understand. I don't see what they would have to be afraid of with Kansas as well. It's just I kind of feel like they may have already shot their wad in the last matchup against Duke because it was such a back and forth matchup. It probably took a lot out of them to get that win. And whereas Kansas annihilated Villanova, and they just basically walked on the court, took a couple breaths, and won the game. So I think Kansas is probably a bit more rested, and I think they're going to get the win. But I still expect a good game from North Carolina. And truth be told, I wouldn't be shocked if North Carolina ended up winning. But Kansas is they're just playing some great basketball. They've been playing great basketball all season, but especially the second half of the season, then through the Big 12 championship, and now here they are. And they're in the championship. I didn't really expect them to be here, but they really have just owned everybody in this championship. And I see tonight's game being a good game, but I don't think it's going to live up to Duke versus North Carolina. All right, and then moving on to some NFL news. We didn't have much going on this weekend, but Frank Gore, running back, most notably for the San Francisco 49ers, he ended up retiring this weekend. Well, it's not official. He's supposed to sign like one of those one-day contracts with the 49ers, because the last few years of his career he's basically been a journeyman. He is one of the greatest running backs of all time. He's like a silent but deadly player because all these years he's just been running and grinding it out, and not a lot of people talk about Frank Gore and when Adrian Peterson dominated the league, you would hear about Adrian Peterson. And as a matter of fact, these two guys basically were in the league at the exact same time. But you always heard about Adrian Peterson. Well, it turns out Frank Gore was the one, and this is not a diss at Adrian Peterson because he was a great running back, especially in his heydays. But Frank Gore, he's going to end his career as the third all-time leading rusher. And I would never have thought that. I remember when he started creeping up there, I'm like, damn, Frank Gore? And it's just because he's just one of those dudes. He just goes to work. He knows his role. He just walks onto the team and plays running back, and he does it really well. And he's an old school type of running back too. He's not going to kill you. He's not going to get you all these flashy moves. He's not going to Barry Sanders your ass and juke you into oblivion. He had pretty decent offensive lines, but it's not like he had like the greatest offensive lines of all time to be running behind. He just would come in and play. His career was from 2005, technically ended in 2020. That was the last year he was active in the league. So he didn't play this past season. And, so he is third all-time leading rusher. He's going to end up with 16,000 yards even, which is crazy that you ended up with 16,000 even like that. That rarely ever happens, but that's where he's at. And that's really big right there. He started his career with the San Francisco 49ers, moved on to the Indianapolis Colts for a bit, and then did like a year with Miami, Buffalo, and then the New York Jets, and then basically just petered out. He started his career at the U. He did end up tearing his ACL at one point, I believe, in his second year. One of the middle years, he ended up tearing his ACL, but he came back big. And he was great running back for them. Then he was selected by the 49ers in the third round of the 2005 NFL draft. And he's actually the San Francisco 49ers rushing yards leader still to this day. So, Frank Gore, he had a stellar career. He didn't win any Super Bowls or anything like that, but, I mean, he was dominant. He was one of the most dominant running backs of his time. And, it's crazy to say that he is third. Behind Emmitt Smith, who's number one, 18,355 yards, and then Walter Payton right behind him. So and then Frank Gore at number 3. So that's pretty crazy. But he had a great career, and we'll see where it goes with his post NFL career. All right, and then let's go ahead and move on to my Tropp 10 NBA Power Rankings. This is going to be, I might I don't know if I'll do some end of season power rankings because next week the playoffs start. So this might be my last week of the Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, but who knows? Maybe I'll just do one to round out the season, but we'll see. So starting off this week, we do have a different number one. Number one, Memphis Grizzlies. No Ja Morant. No problem. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games, and they are on a 7-game winning streak. And that's why I had to put them at number one. Overall, they're 55-23, but they are just playing great basketball. And it's going to be scary when Ja comes back because they're going to be a really good team. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Western Conference because while the Suns have been a spectacular team all season long, the number one thing that the Suns are known for is choking in the playoffs. It's what they did last year. Remember that. They lost the championship. They were the most dominant team last season as well. So, and it's happened in their past before. Those Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire teams, they had their chokeable moments as well. So, while I think the Suns are most definitely the front runner for the championship this year, they are also the biggest front runner for the biggest choke artist team in the leagues. And until they actually win and remove that title from their name, they're going to have to win in order to get rid of that. And so we'll see what happens come playoff time. I still believe in the Suns, but I wouldn't be shocked if they end up choking at some point along the way. And the Grizzlies might be a team who's able to take it to them. But we'll see how that goes. We got a long way because if those two face off in the playoffs, it's going to be for the Western Conference Finals. So we got a minute till we get there. All right, and then so number 2 on my top 10 NBA power rankings are the Phoenix Suns. They didn't fall far. They're 62-16 overall. Oh, and by the way, that's the next opponent that the Lakers have is the Phoenix Suns. And if the Suns get the win, they can actually, and also if I think a couple other things happen, but most notably, if the Suns get the win, they can knock the Lakers out of the playoffs. Isn't that fucking awesome, guys? Fucking Lakers suck. But anyways, we're not talking about how shitty the Lakers are. We'll get to that later. But I had to drop the Suns down this week just because they've lost 2 in a row. And the Grizzlies have won 7 in a row. So I couldn't justify, still keeping the Suns at number 1. But overall, in their last 10 games, they're 8-2. So it's not like they're having any issues. As a matter of fact, Chris Paul, he came back last week, so that's good that he's going to knock the rust off before they get to the playoffs. So I got the Suns at number 2. Then number 3 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I have the Boston Celtics. Didn't fall that far. They're 49-30 overall, won 2 in a row, 8-2 in their last 10 games. Still playing spectacular. Not scared of anybody that they're facing. And I just think they're ready for the playoffs, and they're going to be a scary team come playoff time. But they are number 3 right now on my top 10. Then number 4 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, they are now back up in there, and that would be the Miami Heat. Last week I was talking about how they went 0-4, and they looked like they were in disarray. Well, now they've won 4 in a row, so they've made up for those 4 that they lost. 6-4 in their last 10 games. Overall, they're 51-28. They seem to have found their stride. They last night Jimmy Butler didn't even play against the Raptors, and also they didn't have their coach Eric Spoelstra. So and I think they were missing a couple other dudes, and they were down for a bit against Toronto, but they ended up making a nice comeback and getting the win in Toronto. So the Heat seem to be back in the driver's seat. They're first place out east right now. So, they're number 4 this week. Then number 5 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I got the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 48-30 overall. They've won 2 in a row, and they're 6-4 in their last 10 games. Playing solid basketball. There's nothing different going on with them. They're just Joel Embiid playing great. He's managed to not get injured yet, so hopefully he could stay healthy throughout this playoff run because, he's just playing great, and they're definitely going to need him because if they want to make it, if they want to be a championship team, they're going to need him to be a championship team. And then number 6 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, this is the first time they've made the top 10, and that would be the Atlanta Hawks. They have won 5 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10 games, 41-37 overall. And right now, Trae Young, he's been a great point guard since he's hit the league. But there's something about the second half of the season and something about the playoffs when he just turns it on and gets it going. This has actually been a very common theme for the Atlanta Hawks even before Trae Young was drafted by them. But there's something about the Hawks where they just know how to turn it on come playoff time, and they end up upsetting a few people along the way. So they've just been hot as of late, and it's all because Trae Young is playing some great basketball. We'll see what they got come playoff time. The Eastern Conference is a madhouse right now. I mean, that they're going to be beating the hell out of each other each and every round. So we'll see how long the Hawks will last, but they are ranked number 6 this week for me. Number 7 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, the Dallas Mavericks, 49-30 overall, 6-4 in their last 10 games. The game yesterday against the Bucks, Luka is just it's just so fun to watch him play. Like, he just makes some of the greatest plays. And one of the things that I really love about his style of play is he really reminds me of Kobe Bryant. Just his technical skills, just kind of when he plants his foot. And he just makes some of the craziest plays. He made this backhand pass yesterday where it was he had 3 dudes on him, and he just makes this crazy backhanded pass. And it was just nuts. And, the Mavs actually, they played a great game against the Bucks, and they're looking really good right now. So I've got the Mavs right now at number 7. Then number 8 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I've got the Denver Nuggets. They're 47-32 overall, 6-4 in their last 10 games, and they're just playing solid basketball. They had an up and down week, but nothing crazy. They almost lost to the Lakers, but you know what happens when you're playing the Lakers. You're almost losing, and then you win. At least that's how it's gone this season. So they ended up beating the Lakers yesterday, who actually kind of played a game yesterday. But like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit here. Just hold on. And then number 9 on my top 10 NBA power rankings, I got the Milwaukee Bucks, 48-30 overall, 6-4 in their last 10 games. They did lose yesterday to the Mavericks, but last week Giannis just went off. And even though they lost yesterday, he still had a great game. Giannis has not lost a step at all. This guy he's just playing at such an amazing level. And like I said, this Eastern Conference is something else, because, the Bucks have all the, they have the advantage with the experience because they won the championship last year. So they know what it takes. They basically have the exact same team that won the championship last year. So I think they could definitely be a dark horse team where you're like, that might be the favorite out East, even though, it's looking like the 76ers or the Celtics would probably be the favorite in my opinion. But you can't, in my opinion, you also can't count out the Bucks because just their experience alone. And Giannis he's had a great season, but you could tell he's ready for the playoffs, especially this past week. And then rounding out the top 10 NBA power rankings, the Golden State Warriors. They bumped back into the top 10. They've fallen out for a couple weeks. And they've won 2 in a row, and just the main reason why I put them in here is Klay Thompson. He's getting hot. He's been up and down since he came back, which is to be expected because he has missed 2 seasons. But he really turned it on the other night. I believe it was Saturday night. Can't remember who they were playing, but he just went off. He just had this magical game where he just killed it. Was knocking down every 3 that he could get. He just looked like the old Clay. So it was nice to see. And they're rounding out my top 10. I mentioned the Lakers. And, they had a really bad week. They didn't win 1 game this week, just so y'all know, because they're such a shitty fucking team. But one thing that really bothered me in yesterday's game wasn't actually what happened in the game. It was what was going on the sideline. And, so obviously being a Lakers fan, we're for the most part, I would say the majority of us Lakers fans, we're diehard Kobe fans. We will ride or die for Kobe. We've been in huge arguments about Kobe and how much better he is than certain players throughout the history of the league. And, you can make arguments for everybody. And it's always been like, with LeBron fans, we've always butted heads. Kobe and LeBron fans. Kobe, LeBron, Kobe, LeBron. I used to pay Kobe until I paid LeBron. Sorry, one of my favorite Young Jeezy songs, and I had to bust that out right there. But there was always that fan tension. And even when LeBron signed with the Lakers, I'm not going to lie, it was really difficult for me because I've always hated LeBron. I've never rooted for LeBron. I respect his game. I respect his career. I respect that he is the type of dude who has literally set all these goals throughout his entire life, and he's met all of them too. So I really, really respect that aspect of him. But to me, for me personally, I've never cared much for his style of basketball. And there, just personality-wise, he has this little bitchy personality that I don't really care for either. And that's what was on full display yesterday during the game. And this is just an argument for me to make that as to why Kobe is better than LeBron James. And, Kobe's last 4 years as a Laker, the Lakers were trash. But yet we have Kobe tearing his Achilles and walking out to make the last 2 free throws with a torn Achilles. And his last game ever that he played with the Lakers, it didn't mean anything. It wasn't for a playoff game. It was literally just the last game of the season. Most guys just throw that shit away. Not Kobe. He went for 60 points. Yeah, it was his last game, but he went for 60 fucking points. And that was just what I loved about Kobe, is that, like, he always wanted to win, and you never questioned his love for basketball. And even when he was injured and on the sideline, he was always involved. He was always in your face. And even if the team sucked, he was still ready to win. He was always in championship mode. That was not what I saw from LeBron on the sideline yesterday. This dude, okay, first of all, the way he's played this season, he's played great. You can't knock any aspect of his game on the court. And he has had to battle a couple injuries this season because he's carrying the load, because everybody's been injured, including him, but hasn't been as injured as everybody else on the team. And he's also LeBron, so he's carrying everything. And so I'm not mad at what he's doing on the court, but as I'm watching him during yesterday's game on the sideline, this dude is just like sitting there like nothing's going on. He's got no expression on his face. He's, of course, all dressed up, ready for the fucking cameras to talk about whatever the hell he's wearing. Because, the NBA, it's a goddamn fashion show these days. Always, what are they wearing? Oh, my goodness. And, he's just sitting there. And I swear to God, all he was missing was him staring down at his cell phone, maybe with like a nail file, filing his hands, maybe with like a Starbucks cup in his hand, just looking like a fucking Karen. Yeah, we'll call him LeBron Karen James for yesterday, because that's what the fuck he looked like yesterday. This dude has like no emotion. He's not like talking to anybody. He doesn't even look like he gives a shit that the team is losing. And I kind of get it, because yeah, we're a shitty team this year and chances are we're not going to make the playoffs. But you know what? Yesterday's game actually mattered, because the Lakers are literally barely hanging on to a playoff spot. As a matter of fact, this right now, as the playoff picture looks, they are not in the playoffs. They would just miss the playoffs. So why is the best player on the court missing such an important game? And hey, maybe he's more injured than we know. Okay, let's just say he is. Well, he didn't give two shits and a fuck as he's sitting on the fucking sideline yesterday. He's got like no expression. He's like sitting there just talking to the homies like shit ain't going on. And it's like, dude, can you act like you give a shit about this team? I knew when we ended up signing LeBron, I knew what we were getting. I knew we weren't getting the hungry championship LeBron who played for Miami. I knew we weren't getting the hungry, I want to bring a championship to Cleveland LeBron. I knew we weren't getting that. I knew we were getting the end of career LeBron. I knew we were going to get a good player. I knew he was going to be healthy overall. I knew he was going to give 100% on the court. But unfortunately, we're just getting the dude who really just cares about becoming a billionaire. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hey, like I said, I respect the fact that he is going to be a billionaire, that he has set that dream out, and just by playing basketball. And that's no diss to basketball, because I love basketball, but it's really fucking awesome to see that a dude who came from nothing, who didn't know his father, who was raised by his mother, and he had all the odds against him, and all he had was basketball and being good at basketball, and he's turned that into becoming a billionaire. That's fucking excellent. But when you're playing for my team, especially the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most legendary organizations of all time, we want to see that you give a shit. And like I said, the reason for this rant is not just because I wanted to mock how stupid and he looked on the sideline and just how like annoying it was to watch how disinterested he was in the game. Like I said, all he was missing was just like staring down at his cell phone or filing his fucking nails or just drinking his latte on the sideline. That's all he was missing. Being soccer mom LeBron is what he fucking looked like. And it just pissed me off. And I was sitting there and I'm like, this is why. These are reasons why. Just little reasons like that are why Kobe Bryant is better than LeBron James. He will always be better than LeBron James, at least in my motherfucking opinion. And that's for goddamn sure. At least I know Kobe gave a shit about being a Laker. I don't really think LeBron gives a shit about being a Laker. And that matters to Laker fans. Now let's talk about this playoff picture here that the Lakers are not in currently. They're not out of it, but they're going to need to get some wins. And playing the Phoenix Suns next is not fucking helpful. So we'll see what happens this week. But I'm not. My hopes are not high. So let's start with the Western Conference. The number one seed, of course, would be the Phoenix Suns. I don't think they're going to lose that seed. I mean, they've got 62 wins. Memphis has 55. Basically, it's almost impossible for Memphis to get the number one seed. And so that, with that being said, Memphis is the number two seed. Number three seed is the Golden State Warriors. Number four, the Dallas Mavericks. Number five, the Denver Nuggets. Number six, the Utah Jazz. And then in the play-in tournament, number seven, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Number eight, Los Angeles Clippers. And then number nine, the New Orleans Pelicans. And then number 10, San Antonio Spurs. So that's how the Western Conference side of it looks. And then I guess we'll go ahead and I'll mention the teams that are completely out of it on the Western Conference side. The Sacramento Queens and the Portland Trail Blazers have now officially joined the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets as no longer eligible for the playoffs. And we'll see when the Lakers get into that category soon. And then over in the Eastern Conference, number one seed right now are the Miami Heat. Number two, Boston Celtics. Number three, Milwaukee Bucks. Number four, Philadelphia 76ers. Number five, Chicago Bulls. Number six, Toronto Raptors. And then on the play-in side, we've got number seven, Cleveland Cavaliers. Number eight, Atlanta Hawks. Number nine, Charlotte Hornets. And then rounding out the top, the number 10 is the Brooklyn Nets. And a couple more teams actually clinched playoff spots for sure this week. The Golden State Warriors clinched a spot. The Los Angeles Clippers clinched a play-in spot. The Boston Celtics clinched. Milwaukee Bucks, Philadelphia 76ers, and then on the Eastern Conference side, the Charlotte Hornets and the Brooklyn Nets both clinched on the play-in side. And then also on the Eastern Conference, teams that are completely out of it this week, and basically these teams are all the top 10 teams that I just mentioned in the East are in, because these five teams are out, and that would be the New York Knicks and the Washington Wizards this week joined the Indiana Pacers, Detroit Pistons, and the Orlando Magic as not playoff eligible for this season. So they all are looking forward to the draft. And then also in basketball news this week, the Basketball Hall of Fame not nominees, the inductees were announced this week. Starting off with Manu Ginobili, four-time NBA champ. He was with the San Antonio Spurs. Great player. Had a great career. And was an integral part of that San Antonio Spurs team. Definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Then you also have Tim Hardaway. He was mostly known for being with the Miami Heat. George Karl, legendary coach, most known for being with the Denver Nuggets. And then since this is the Basketball Hall of Fame, they induct not just the NBA players, but then they also induct college basketball coach Bob Huggins. And then they also induct WNBA players as well. So Swin Cash, Lindsey Whalen, Marianne Stanley, they all are in. I don't watch women's basketball, so I couldn't tell you what the hell they did. And then they also put a referee in, Hugh Evans. So that is this year's Basketball Hall of Fame class. And then a couple things happened in baseball this week. The Dodgers ended up trading for Kimbrel, closer from the White Sox. They ended up trading outfielder A.J. Pollock. They needed a closer to fill in for Jansen. I don't think Kimbrel really is it, but he's better than nothing. And then also the San Diego Padres, they bolstered their starting pitching by trading for the A's starting pitcher Sean Manaea. And I don't know what the hell the A's are doing, but they're basically trading away every halfway decent player they had. And this just really makes the San Diego Padres a much better team, because I already thought their starting pitching was good. And now they just have they're a really deep squad at this point. And then in some bad MLB news, Jacob deGrom, he is going to miss at least the first month of the season with a right scapula injury. He injured himself during spring training this week. And it looks like he's going to start the year off on the IL, and the 4 weeks is just preliminary. It could be longer than that. It could also be shorter than that, but it's looking like it's going to be at least 4 weeks. So huge blow to the Mets right there. Great start to their season. That's what it's like to be a Mets fan, though. All right, and then every time I bring up the Atlanta Braves, at least for this season, I do keep mentioning how I think they've become a better team this past offseason, and they won the World Series last year, and I think they have the potential to go back-to-back this year. And it's so rare that I just randomly did some research on it, and I was like, you know what, this would make a great Trop 5 list. And so I'm going to end up doing the Trop 5 Greatest MLB Repeat Champs. And when I did my research, it's crazy because there's only been 14 teams to ever go back-to-back. Now, a few of the teams that I mentioned, they actually won more than 2 in a row. So, yeah, it's crazy that happened at any point. But it's also crazy just how this never happens, really. And then also of note, 6 out of those 14 times, the New York Yankees did it. So basically, I could have done a top 5 list with an honorable mention and just ranked all these Yankees teams, but I didn't do that because, a lot of those Yankees teams were like from 1905 or whatever, and so we don't really want to talk about times that far, even though I will say there is one Yankees team on here that's from a time before a lot of us listening, I imagine. So let me go ahead and kick it off with the Trop 5 Greatest MLB Repeat Champs. Number 5, the Toronto Blue Jays, 1992 and 1993. This team had Roberto Alomar, Joe Carter, Dave Winfield, Ricky Henderson. I mean, those are some perennial players right there, some of the greatest of all time. In 1992, they beat the Atlanta Braves, won the series 4-2. And then in 1993, they beat the Philadelphia Phillies. They won that series 4-2 as well. And they were just, when you look at them, they were just a stacked team. And the teams that they beat were actually really good as well. So, and I mean, this was Toronto Blue Jays, by the way. This was the first MLB team to ever win a championship, not within the U.S. So, yeah, that was a big deal. But this was a spectacular team. And that's why they went back-to-back. Then number 4 on my Trop 5 Greatest MLB Repeat Champs, I have the Cincinnati Reds. They won in 1975 and 1976. This was the team that Pete Rose played for, Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench. That's just a couple of Hall of Fame players to name off. Well, Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, we all know he's a Hall of Fame player. He's just not in there due to basically a technicality, but we all know that he was one of the greatest players of all time, regardless of being put in the Hall of Fame. But anyways, this team was great, and they were just a scrappy ass team. And man, just watching some of their highlights is crazy, especially Pete Rose. That guy was such a fucking asshole. But he must have been really fun to watch in real time. So in 1975, they beat the Boston Red Sox. They won that series 4-3. And then 1976, they beat the New York Yankees, and they swept the New York Yankees. And just yet again, this was another great team. They were, Cincinnati is not like, I mean, they are a big baseball team. That's for damn sure. But they're not like a nationally known team, especially these days. But this team was just lights out. They played great baseball. Like I said, they were scrappy. Pete Rose was a total fucking asshole, just barreling into people like he was Ty Cobb, I swear, man. But like I said, they must have been really fun to watch. So they're number 4 on my Trop 5 Greatest MLB Repeat Champs. And it makes sense why they were repeat champs, that's for sure. Number 3 on my Trop 5 Greatest MLB Repeat Champs, I have the New York Yankees. This was a 1998 through 2000 run. This was the most recent. This was actually technically the last repeat champs as well in baseball. They actually won 3 in a row. And like I said, last time that we had a repeat champ. So 2000, when they won in 2000, it's been 22 years since we have had a repeat champ in baseball. So we're long overdue. But anyways, back to this Yankees team. They had Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte. This team was stacked. And I'm not going to lie, I loved this team. I totally enjoyed the shit out of this team. And oh man, especially I'm a huge Derek Jeter fan, one of my favorite baseball players of all time. and just the way that they played the game. You know, that this was in the time period when they won the ALCS against the A's in that crazy game saving play by Derek Jeter. So they won their first of their 3 championships in 1998 when they swept the San Diego Padres. Then in 1999, they swept the Atlanta Braves. And then in 2000, they beat the New York Mets 4-1 in that series. And that was a big deal because obviously you've got 2 New York teams going up against each other in the World Series. But man, the Yankees just owned it, and really even beyond that season, because they lost in 2001, right? I'm pretty sure that was the year they lost to the stupid goddamn Arizona Diamondbacks. Man, I remember watching that World Series too. It was actually kind of funny watching that World Series because I remember it was me and one girlfriend of mine, and then we were hanging out with 2 guys, and it was so funny because the 2 girls, me and my friend, we were the ones who were way more into the baseball game than the 2 guys. They didn't even know what the fuck was going on. It was just so hilarious. But I remember we were watching the last game of the series when the Yankees lost. And when they lost, her and I were so fucking pissed off, and the guys could not believe it. And I'm just staring at them do we need to get you some panties? Because you guys don't give a shit about baseball, and the 2 girls are going nuts here. You guys look like some bitches right now. So yeah, I do remember that World Series vividly, just mainly because of that reason. But I just loved this Yankees team, and so they're number 3. And if they're number 3, who the hell are number 1 and 2? Well, these top 2 teams. Number 1 had to be number 1 in my opinion. So when I get there, I'll explain why, and you'll know why, because the amount of championships they won in a row is mind-boggling. But let's move on to number 2 on my top 5 greatest MLB repeat champs, and that would be the Oakland A's from 1972 to 1974. They won 3 championships in a row, and they were just one of the most dominating teams at the time. They had Reggie Jackson, Reggie Jackson is one of the greatest players of all time. He's one of those players whenever I get around to ranking the baseball players, the legendary baseball players that I did not get to see that I wish I could have seen, Reggie Jackson he's definitely going to be in top 5. I don't know if he's number 1, but he might be number 1. Watching highlights of his and just what type of a player he was, I wish I could have seen him play. And then they also had the amazing pitcher Raleigh Fingers, and they were just a great freaking team, and they beat some great teams along the way to win 3 World Series in a row. Starting with 1972, they beat the Cincinnati Reds in a series 4-3, and by the way, that was before basically before that Reds team, because the Reds team that I just mentioned. They were 1975 and 1976. So the Reds had to go through this A's team before they could get to a championship level. And then in 1973, the A's beat the New York Mets. They won that series 4-3. And then in 1974, they beat the Dodgers. They won that series 4-1. And they just were a dominating team. And it was tough because I wanted to put that Yankees team above them, but I really honestly couldn't, just because of the teams that they beat along the way. Whereas, the Yankees, beating the Padres, even though that Padres team was a good team, obviously you're a good team since you made it to the World Series, but come on, it was the Padres. they ain't blowing you out of the water. But, the A's that was a really good team. And then so number 1 on my top 5 greatest MLB repeat champs, the New York Yankees from 1949 to 1953. They won 5 championships in a row. There was no way I couldn't put that team at number 1. I actually think there was another time where they won 4 or 5 in a row. It was actually really difficult, other than this Yankees team, to kind of parse out what Yankees teams am I going to put in here, because I'm not going to make it all Yankees teams. But this team had to go on there. They were number 1 as soon as I looked at who was on the team. This team had Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra. Those are 3 of the greatest baseball players of all time. Not just greatest Yankees, greatest baseball players of all time. So I can't even imagine getting to watch this team play. But they started their runoff in 1949 against the Los Angeles, or actually, no, they were not Los Angeles at that time. They were Brooklyn, I believe. So, yeah, they were the Brooklyn Dodgers at that time. They beat them 4-1. Then in 1950, they beat the Philadelphia Phillies. They swept them. Then in 1951, they beat the Giants. They beat them. They won that series 4-2. Then in 1952, they beat the Dodgers again. They won that series 4-3. And then in 1953, they beat the Dodgers again and won that series 4-2. So yeah, there was no way I couldn't put that team at number one. So that's my top 5 greatest MLB repeat champs of all time. We'll see if the Atlanta Braves can become the 15th team to do that. Like I said, I believe they can do it. They only got better this offseason. I feel like the only way they don't go back is if they get in their own way or injuries, of course. So we'll see if they get there. But I definitely think they can. And like I said, looking over the 14 teams that have done that, it's crazy to think, especially like you wouldn't expect to see teams like the Blue Jays and the Reds on there. Especially if you're like a recent baseball fan, because both of those teams aren't known for being good or for winning or even having halfway decent players on the teams. But they were great repeat champs. Hell, even the A's. The A's are not a good team either. At least these days they're not. So yeah, that's my top 5. And since this is episode number 24, the Kobe episode, I've got to end it with a Kobe quote. And we'll go ahead and end it with this. Dedication makes dreams come true. The great Kobe Bryant. R.I.P. number 24. All right, guys. Enjoy that national championship. Kansas versus North Carolina. We'll see what happens there. But, yeah, we got basketball playoffs right around the corner. And we've got opening day, fuck faces. Opening day is on Thursday. So next time I talk to you guys on Friday, we will have baseball season, bitches. So enjoy that national championship, y'all. Peace.